Thanks everybody for coming tonight. This is one of our Merrick Engages sessions. This is an opportunity that we use at the Merrick School of Business to introduce interesting business people. And so if you don't know me, I'm the dean. I'm Dean Murray Dalziel. And my criteria for interesting is that I find them interesting. Okay. We obviously made this open. I know some of you are older students, and some of you are already working. Most of our students are already working. The idea is that it's supplemental to what we do in courses in education, and it's supplemental for our faculty in terms of being able to have a dialogue with business people, but we try and get some themes. And tonight's I think it's going to be, you're going to really like this theme, and it's Bob Luddy, who's from CaptiveAire, founder and CEO of CaptiveAire, you'll find this is going to be a fascinating story. I wanted Bob to come because, when we were talking, it was just after we first were in correspondence, just after the election campaign, and and during the election campaign, it brought to my mind various things. But one of the things that we talked about in that campaign, is a public issue, is about manufacturing in the U.S. and where is manufacturing in the U.S. And Bob, I think he's running 6 plants in the U.S., producing for the U.S. and producing it at high quality, and you hear part of the story. So. Part of what I wanted to make it was a theme about manufacturing works in the U.S. But our timing was great, and when we agreed him to come, because this is a Global Entrepreneurship Week, and those of you know that Global Entrepreneurship Week is universities, incubators, people who support entrepreneurship. That around the world we publicize and we agree on to celebrate entrepreneurship this week, and we run some events. And this is one of our global entrepreneurship events because Bob Luddy was actually a student entrepreneur at LaSalle, and as he'll tell you, probably some of the story, had to sell his business to go to Vietnam. So thank you for your service. And came back and had a number of businesses, but grew this business from his garage to over 1,000 people working today. So I thought we're going to go through some of these themes today. So if you're a student entrepreneur, this is what it's going to look like in, what do you think, 20 years time? 20 years since you graduated. So 20 years time. So Bob, welcome. I should have said, just introduce you. The school you went to was LaSalle College. It was LaSalle College in these days?
It's now university. Yeah, it was college when I went there.
And in Philadelphia, and Bob grew up in Harrisburg, which, by the way, is in our catchment area. So you could have done an MBA here at in-state tuition rates. But it's grew up in Harrisburg and is now living in North Carolina. So Bob, welcome, and maybe it might be useful just to tell people a little bit about what CaptiveAire does, and and what lines are there, and then we can ask you start with the obvious question, and let's understand what the business is. But the good obvious question is, how did you get into this business? But tell us about the business first, and then how you get into it.
Okay, I had a job selling fire suppression systems for restaurants. They're used in the kitchen hood in case they have a fire. And so I started out originally as a contractor installing these fire suppression systems in restaurants. And very quickly we realized that we could install some hoods, which gave us some more business and maybe a growth avenue. And then before too long, we decided we could make our own duct. So we made some duct systems. And then we decided we'd try our hand at making some small kitchen hoods. So we somewhat migrated over an 8-year period from 76 to 84. And in 84, we jettisoned the Fire System Suppression Company. We changed the name of the company from Atlantic Fire Systems to CaptiveAire Systems. And that was one of those moments where I knew that as the fire installer, we could only get so large. We had limited control of our future. But to be a manufacturer of commercial kitchen ventilation systems, we pretty much had unlimited opportunities to the extent that we could take advantage of it. I should point out that the company was started with no money, so those of you familiar with the concept of Milton Friedman's sweat capital, I'm not recommending it, I'm just telling you what I did. So I didn't look for any money, nobody would have given me money anyhow, it would have been a waste of time. And I know people that spend all this time looking for money and they never get it, and so they never get off the ground. And I didn't want any partners or any other investors for any reason. So that means we're going to grind it out, you've got to generate internal capital. So the first 8 years were not too pleasant. The main goal was to put enough money in the bank today so we could cover our checks tomorrow. And that continued to about 1984 where we became stable. As we moved into, a lot of things come your way, I think, in life if you're doing the right thing. So some guy offered me if I would sign a note, he would sell me his building for my signature, and I would start making payments. So now we had a production plan. 1982 that was. Then we had dreamed of machinery that could bend hoods, didn't exist. In 1983, a guy walks in from Maastricht, Holland, and says, I've got this bending machine. It's computerized hydraulics, it's going to be the future of metal bending. And I said, I'll take it. We didn't have the money to buy it, but we bought it anyhow. So my bent was on efficiency. And in our industry, nobody cared about efficiency. You just made a product and you said, this is how much it cost. Nobody was concerned about it. So we began to scale up. It took a long time. Other favorable things happened in the industry. We changed the weighting of the hoods, how they were made. We changed the type of metal we used. By 2000, we were the dominant company in kitchen hoods. Fast forward, and we became by far the largest company in the industry. By 2001, we were $100 million. The largest company at that time was about $20 million. So I describe it as a mom and pop industry. And from there, we began to develop new products, open more plants, and to where we are today, we're more of a technology company. We make our own computer, electronic boards, own software, and we basically have changed the industry in that period of time. But it's based on a vision of continuous improvement, not caring what the industry does. And I think today you could go into virtually any industry, no matter how good you think it is, and make it better. How did Starbucks, serving coffee, that's been made from the beginning of time, dominate the coffee business? And even today, a good number of restaurants can't make good coffee, even after witnessing Starbucks for 30 years. So if you use that as a proxy for any industry that you're engaged in, with innovation and new vision and new ideas and new equipment, you can change those industries. And every industry in the United States needs to be changed.
So tell us a little bit about, I mean, we had a private seminar earlier, which this is an example of what I've learned, okay? In school. But, a lot of people talk about continuous improvement. There's a lot of consultants around, continuous improvement. And, it seems to me that you're doing something different than some of these companies. I mean, what do you think, what's your driving principles when you're talking about continuous improvement?
Well, one is we don't use consultants, management consultants. My idea is if you need a management consultant, then we need a new CEO. That's my premise. We will use technical consultants who know more about a technology than we know. And that process goes on forever. Continuous improvement, Kaizen, and I'll give you a specific example. So we are literally almost hell-bent on continuous improvement. So you have, on one hand, you hear a lot about best practices. Best practices tends to be static. There's even big companies, they print books on best practices. Mm-hmm. So we like the idea of best practices, but it has to be dynamic. And I'll give you an example of the fire system that I installed in 1976, sold for $750. Today it sells for $3,000 installed. So it's a 4Xer in that period of time. If you look at a commercial cooking hood, and I have a 25-year data point, that we make sells for about the same price as 25 years ago. But that kitchen hood is dramatically better. So 25 years ago, it took out 400 CFM per linear foot. Now, on average, it takes out 200. So it's vastly more efficient. You used to have smoke and effluents getting into restaurants. It was very common. It was considered okay. We can capture all the effluents, and we can even send them through pollution control devices and take them out of the air to the extent they want to pay for it. So I think one is we move quickly. We have very high goals and standards. And I can't tell you how many times, and I'll give you a couple of examples. In 1984, for the first time, we hired real engineers, because none of us had any engineering background. So we hired 4 recent grad engineers, all just right out of college. One of my nemesis, still with us over 35 years, calls up and says, "Bob, I don't think you're very smart." I said, "Well, why is that?" And he says, "Well, you hired 4 rookie engineers," and you get the context. "And you could have hired 1 seasoned engineer, and we could have been so much further ahead." I said, "Call me in 4 years." In 4 years, we were on AutoCAD. We began this transformation process. So CaptiveAire grows by defying conventional wisdom, even to the point where I don't allow our engineers and people to associate with the industry, because you're going to be like that industry in a relatively short period of time. And I try to explain to them, we believe what the industry is doing is all wrong, and it's our job to fix it. And that's how we transform and lead the industry. Whereas most people tend to think, this is an industry practice. If I've heard industry practice once, I've heard it 1,000,000 times, and I say, I don't care what the industry practice is. I care what it should be and what we're going to make it. For most people, that environment's not totally comfortable with them. So we're moving fast, we're moving high levels of vision, we're terrorizing the status quo, and we're basically doing what Schumpeter said is capitalism is disruptive, but the disruption has to be external, but it has to be internal. If Charles Koch was here, he would say internal creative destruction is much harder than external. And people get very miffed. We brought in a brilliant IT guy and said to our guy in charge of IT, "This guy can really help you. He's brilliant. And he's going to work for you. You're going to look good with this guy." In a month, that IT director walked out the door. I could give you a chapter and verse about these type of situations, but I'm not going to lose that brilliant IT engineer, who's, by the way, still with us and has transformed our IT division, because the status quo says, well, you're messing with my shop or my little purview here. That is a continuous thing. So how anybody feels about change is not too important to us. We understand it's a challenge for them. We understand most people, even within our company, we have this term we use, blockers. Most people, if they can block the change, then they don't have to deal with it. So we run over the blockers, basically, and we run over the troublemakers. So we're running basically right past them all the time. And most companies don't have the moxie to do it for a myriad of reasons. So it's continuous advancement, Kaizen, fixing all the small problems. And Clayton Christensen used this comment. He said, "I don't use the word creativity and innovation because it's so overused, I don't even know what it means anymore. Innovation is actually rare. Kaizen, or continuous improvement, is every day. So once in a while, we have developed our own fire suppression system using water to put out grease fires. So what does everybody tell you? Are you an idiot? I mean, does everybody on the planet but you knows you can't do that? Well, we proved it to be devastatingly effective. So the technology is changing now to electronic control, supervision of these systems, reporting to a web, water-based. So you can put an unlimited amount of water. We're going to put the fire out. This is a complete no-brainer. pretty much if you look across the technologies, that's what we do. And then I'll give you another example. We have a 40-year-old chief engineer, came with us out of College Park, Maryland, right here in Baltimore. And brilliant engineer, does tremendous work. And one day I called him up and I said, how would you feel about this? Every 3 years, we're going to take a product that you designed and we're going to try to rip it to shreds and find something wrong with it and how it could be better. And he said, I'm with you. I'll help you do it. Now, if you do that to an average 40, 50, whatever age VP of engineering, they're going to be hostile and mad. They absolutely are going to be mad. Because I invented it, I'm brilliant, and how could you even think that you could make it better than me? So this idea that we're always moving to the future, we don't fall in love with our products or our ideas unless they turn out to be really good. And even then, as my mentor, Dr. Bill Peterson, said, conventional wisdom's either wrong or it's going to be wrong. So no technology lasts forever. Sustaining ideas can last for a lifetime. Philosophies can last for a lifetime. Products and technologies do not. So to the extent, when we think of all these companies like Kodak, I went to a presentation by the CEO of Kodak, 1986. We've changed. We've got the message. We understand the future. Well, not as well as they should have. So there's a delta between the talk and the action. And the action is hard. Every aspect of it is hard. And nobody likes it. Because our natural inclination is we want to be comfortable, we don't want to change. And then even further, we don't even know why we should have to, because we're on top of the heap. Why can't we just coast a little bit? It's all, so running a company like this requires strong leadership, brute determination, and be willing to say, if you want to be left behind, that's your choice. The company didn't do it to you. You made the choice to stay in place. We made the choice. Train's going down the road, and it's going to go as fast as we can run it. And you might not like the speed, and you might not like the ideas. This is how this company runs. Now, the good news is a lot of people embrace it. But really smart, aggressive people, that's where they want to work. Well, guess who you want working for you? Those people. And the drones, or the complacent class as described by Tyler Cowen over George Mason, is not going to help you get anywhere. And if I said the number one problem a company deals with is complacency. People want to stay in place. They're happy where they're at. That's all great, but it's not an option in the future world.
So on how you run the company and organization, so I'm right, the dimensions this year, 6 manufacturing plants, and am I right, 90 sales offices?
Yes.
90
sales offices.
Sales offices. So, you know, and you're the CEO, kind of basically, I mean, maybe you need a flip chart for this, but we don't
have an org, no, we do not have an org chart.
Organizational chart.
We don't have one. I hate that stuff. We have it all in our head. We don't have all this who reports to who. In a sense, everybody's working for themselves. That's my primary view. So they don't need a whole bunch of bosses. We need some organization to keep people on the right track. But this idea of all this reporting structure and meetings, we don't have any of that. We've eliminated it. So we're very flat. And again, a lot of people don't like our structure. But if you're running a sales office for CaptiveAire, the people in this office, they love it. Because you know what they think? I work for myself. I said, that's terrific. As long as you follow our guidelines. So they don't need a boss. Their boss is peer pressure, market pressures, and the goals and standards that we set for them.
And what about the manufacturing plants?
The manufacturing, we have 6 manufacturing plants, 6 plant managers. And they basically work for the team. So theoretically, they all work for me. But we also, they're getting instructions from engineering, from application engineering, from IT department, from finance, from HR. So we have more of a team management. And these teams tend to run independently toward common goals. So somebody in charge of finance, our finance VP has been around for a long, long time, 36 years. He knows exactly what his team has to do. We don't need a lot of coordination because our strategic plan, which we don't have one, is we want to be $1 billion. There's a strategic plan. Go figure out how to do it. We'll have some steps in there. We'll have one page that we'll shoot out every year. Here's the things we think we need to do. And then these teams are working on it. So all of the management ideas that everybody believes you can only have 6 people reporting to you if you have more than that. I have 200 salespeople report to me. I have 6 plants that report to me. And you could kind of go, and then I have the corporate office, IT, different divisions. But on any given day this morning, I didn't hear from any of them. Because they're just out doing their jobs. If they need me, they'll contact me. If I see something I don't like, I'll contact them. We do have very advanced systems, so on this iPad, I have a dashboard. I can tell you what every sales division's doing. I can tell you what their product mix is. I can tell you the top 50 customers. I could probably tell you more about some of them than they know themselves by looking at data. I've got on here their P&L for the last 5 years. I can tell you everything about their P&L, what kind of a manager they are. So we set goals, we have teams of people working on it. People can be highly independent in the system, but they have to be working toward common goals. So if we have an engineering standard, you must meet that standard. If we have a financial standard, you have to meet that standard, or you'll hear from somebody. It might not be me. So for most companies and most CEOs, they would say no company can operate this way. But the fact of the matter is we have operated this way. Here's a little tidbit. We had these consultants call me through one of the entrepreneurial organizations and said, we want to give you some free consulting. I really didn't want to do it, but I let them come over. They did this little report for free. And here's what they said. You are so lucky we showed up. You're ready to collapse. You can't run a company this way. You'll never grow as a company. And basically, you're really lucky we're here to help you with the GE gray hair wisdom. Perspective of time. So I said, thanks for coming over, but I'm going to decline. At that time, we were about $10 million. So we've grown 50-fold since that report. So I think that individuals who have a vision where they want to go to, they develop the skills to do it, and they surround themselves, because an entrepreneur doesn't do it on their own. The team's doing the work. I'm setting the standards, the direction that we're going in. And now engineering and other groups, they're in that process too. They're developing standards. They're helping us reach the future. And to me, that's how an entrepreneurial company runs. It doesn't run by all the things that you might traditionally learn within management.
Now, I'm going to switch, but keep on that same theme, but a slight switch, because I know you're about to publish a book, and we'll have you back for your book tour. But you know, it's called the Entrepreneurial Life, by the way. It's coming out soon, so book it ahead in Amazon. But you know, Entrepreneurial Life. Quite a few of the students in this audience I know are, you know, entrepreneurship students, you know, and they want to be entrepreneurs, and some people in the audience already are entrepreneurs. I mean, what are your basic principles around you believe that entrepreneurs need? You know, the characteristics of entrepreneurs, the attributes of entrepreneurs. I mean, what do you believe is the secret sauce of entrepreneurs?
Number one, and this is Ludwig von Mises, the entrepreneur is the servant of the user. If you serve the user, then they're going to pay you, and you're important to them. So your whole focus is, I'm here to serve you. I can give you chapter and verse, where sometimes even within our own company, somebody doesn't serve a customer properly. We get calls or we find out about it. We immediately, and we don't care who caused the problem. If you have a problem with our system, we're going to fix it for you. We're going to keep you going no matter whose fault it is. So we don't have the blame game. So what's that customer going to say? CaptiveAire is the only company they want to do business with. Because we say, we are here for the life of your product. Forever, we are with you. So that's number one. I don't care how good your product is, or how cheap it is, or anything else. If you don't have extraordinary high levels of service, you're going to be jettisoned by the customer. The second is Jean-Baptiste Say, Say's Law, 1813. Okay, this is 200-year-old advice. Overall supply creates demand. Lord King says demand creates supply. It's not true. If you think it is true, then go try it in the marketplace. So what is an iPhone? iPhone created $250 billion in business, and if you look at the overall industry, maybe $1 trillion in business. It's massive business. There's a new product's introduced that the customer didn't demand, didn't know about, didn't know it could be produced, and they're enticed to buy it. So by bringing something new to the market that's valuable to the customer, that's how you create an entrepreneurial business. Now, the entrepreneur has to guess right, if you like. If you guess wrong, the market's not interested in, supply didn't create any demand, price may be too high, technology's not interesting, it could be a whole myriad of reasons. And then so what's behind that? Alertness, Kirzner, student of Mises. What's entrepreneurship? Alertness, paying attention. Most of the opportunities in your life, they're right in front of you. Can you recognize it? We've had technologies in front of us that we didn't recognize for 20 years. And so what we often say is we finally figured this out, and we realize how stupid we've been for the last 20 years because it's been in front of us and we didn't recognize it. So this idea of alertness and thinking and experimenting are integral in the ability to serve the user with a technology that's interesting to them. So if you look at the largest company in kitchen ventilation, second to us is about under $40 million. So we're 10 times the size of our second competitor because we have integrated, we've brought new technologies to the market that nobody thought they needed or never bought before or bought under another form, and we've integrated them into a big package. What did the iPhone do? How many industries did the iPhone put out of business? Does anybody need an alarm clock anymore or a compass? It's all ingrained in that product. So if you look at future products, they're going to be highly integrated, highly useful. Jean-Baptiste Say understood this in 1813. And yet, many people will dispute that fact that it's not true, including Lord Keynes, who we tend to disagree with.
And so the, sorry, yeah. Jimmy, you want to say?
Could you share a little bit about brick and mortar employees? How are you keeping them? How are you recruiting them? How are you retaining them?
Okay, so we, in the HR department, we're aggressively trying to find good employees. We advertise all over the country, and we often hire people that we don't need because for some reason they came to us and they're talented. So if we find a talented person, there's a high probability we're going to hire them within any range that we could use them in the future. We tend to, in sales, we hire engineers because we're in a very technical business and we need people with technical minds. I didn't mention mentors, but mentors are very important, and I'm going to give you an example. Ken Iverson, the greatest steel man of the 20th century, created Nucor Steel, brought many mills from Europe to the U.S. Bethlehem Steel rolled on the ground laughing at him until they went bankrupt. So I had a chance I called up Ken Iverson, who answered his own phone most of the time and most assuredly after 5 o'clock. And I asked him to come to speak at a local college, Meredith College. He says, I'm too old, I've given too many speeches, I can't do it. I said, Ken, I need you. I'm going to call you tomorrow. You got to say yes. Called him, he agreed to come. So what I learned from Ken was the incentive system that they have at Nucor. If he has 80 people making steel, they pay a bonus for the week to those 80 production workers based on the production of steel. If you miss 1 minute of the production week, you don't make a bonus that week. So guess what? 80 people show up because they want their bonus. So we put a bonus system in where we allocate whatever the percent is, 8% of the factory profit goes back every month to the factory workers. And it's distributed on a point system. They can get 1 to 6 points. So say somebody's not doing so well, they get 3 points, they're mad. Why didn't I get 6 points? So it self-reconciles. Either they're going to do what the plant manager wants them to do, or maybe they get mad and they quit. But over the long term, they have the potential to make an extra week's salary, same as Nucor, every 4 weeks. That's a big incentive. In our sales, all based on incentive. Incentives are paid every month to every employee, to a point where they want to know how the company did almost before I do, and I'm anxious to know. But they're also equally anxious because they're sharing in those profits. And those profits are growing over time. And so what's that make them do? If there's somebody in my division not doing well, I don't want them here. Because they're diluting the profit of our division. Whether it's a plant, a sales team, internal team. So high incentives. And while we have lofty goals, we have a very light touch with employees. We don't scream at them, we don't yell at them, we don't get mad at them, we don't do reviews. The review is done, and some HR departments are coming around. It's continuous. It's every day. Tell them how they're doing, what they're not doing, what you'd like them to do. And people like that environment because they can work independently. They don't have to worry. And anybody that's heavy-handed or mean in our company, they're out the door. So we don't have these disruptive people, disruptive in a negative sense. I don't talk about them. Just push them out. In bigger companies, that could be maybe more challenging. And I don't have to do it because we've created a culture now. We're not going to have sexual harassment. We're not going to, and if we do, it's going to be dealt with summarily, immediately, and harshly. So people know, I'm not going there. So we create a culture that people want to work in, and they can personally advance. And I could give you chapter and verse of individuals that have come with this company at low skill, medium skill, or very high skill, and have progressed to levels they probably couldn't have imagined in their career. If you look in sales engineering, they can't go work anywhere else and make the kind of money that we're paying them. So nobody ever leaves. So maybe we're overpaying them. You could make a case for that. But it's also a nice luxury that you don't lose people in your sales division over long periods of time. Generally, we have too little turnover. How many people say that? Turnover is too small. Because turnover is actually, a little bit of turnover is a good thing. Even if you have great people, it's bringing new ideas in. Now, we have enough growth where it's not a serious problem. The largest problem you face in the company is complacency. Complacency. And complacent people don't think of themselves as being complacent. They think they're just doing fine. They're doing great. But when you're in a fast-moving pace, you're never doing great. You're challenged to the maximum every single day. And if you look at our engineers, myself, we have a series of problems we're trying to solve. We're thinking about them every day. And as soon as we see the green light and we got the opening, we're jamming that thing and we're doing it immediately. That's a culture. And for some people it's good, and for some people it's not so good.
Hi, my name is Murray. I just saw this online. I'm a community organizer, and I also do things with our education system. So when I'm thinking in terms of who you hiring, I had called the Department of Education here at Maryland, and I asked, about a specific manufacturing, because my community is about 7 women. We got together, and we want to start our own company, and it's based off of sewing. I'm not going to go into detail. And what the woman told me from the state of Maryland is that they looked at the Labor Department and determined that they took sewing out of schools because there was no need. Not that your manufacturing company needs sewing, but at what level do children or people in our communities, when do they have to start having some of the skill sets that you're looking for? Do you find things are being taught at a high school level versus college level, or are you only hiring college grads? When I think of manufacturing, I'm thinking people who are skilled at, using tools and making, bending metal. Or
and we're hiring on a wide range. So we're hiring engineers, we're hiring service technicians, and we're hiring people who just want to go to work.
Right, versus having a college degree. So you are hiring some people out of high school?
Oh, yeah.
I think you're maybe, if I can expand on your question, it's a good question, I think, because, one of the questions that I've often heard in this debate about manufacturing in the U.S., and kind of like your view on that, is that we've lost the skills in manufacturing and we haven't got it. So I'd like to get your view about, do you think we have the skills because you've got 6 plants in different locations, and you know, and what more do you think we should be doing in the education system? You know, either from K through higher education, let's put it, that would be helpful for manufacturing.
Well, we don't have the skills. So Trump talks about bringing all these plants to the Midwest. The people aren't there to do it. The skills aren't there to do it currently today. Our view is we have to solve every problem at our level. Now, I've started these schools to try to make a contribution in the K-12 area. So we train our own people. We bring engineers in. We transform those engineers in a 2-year period by being very demanding. I have a young lady that works for me, and she's in her 4th year now. She said in year 1, her brain hurt because she was given tough assignments and said, go do them, go figure it out. That's pretty much the way we operate. Now, there's a lot of people that can help you figure those things out, but there's still a burden on the person. At the manufacturing level, obviously, we have to train them how to do these things, and we encourage them to take courses. So pretty much we have to solve all our problems at our level. We can work in the public sector to try to make it better, but the schools have abandoned vocational education. They even in the process, there's an article today, it was on the Fox Business News. It's getting down to college where if I can't monetize my skills immediately, I can't pay my college debt. So there's a complex number of problems there. We also teach them philosophy, economics, the humanities, and try to say that this company operates on more than just engineering. It operates on people and on philosophy and on good economic principles, good management principles. So we're teaching this all the time. But as far as people coming from the market that are exactly what we want, they're few and far between. Even if they're a graduate engineer, it's going to be a wrenching for them in the first couple of years, what's going to be thrown at them, and the skills they're going to have to develop. But there's people who will help them do it.
And so what are some of the ways in which you go about teaching these broader skills? It can be fairly challenging to teach philosophy and even economics, sometimes, right? So how do you go about it?
We have monthly seminars. We have a 1-hour technical seminar. It's very technical. It's for engineers. So they're getting an in-depth look. What's a direct drive motor? How does it work? What are the considerations? And those can be reviewed because they're all taped. We talk about comparative advantage, competitive advantage, opportunity cost, these economic principles, cooperation. And I explain it in detail that cooperation does not mean that we agree. We agree where we're trying to get to, and we cooperate to try to make that work. And when you have a cooperative team, life is really fun. I look at people who are the devil's advocates as blockers. Their sole intent normally is to block, so I don't like devil's advocates. What I like is if you have an objection or you have a different idea, state the idea. Put it into debate like you would in any normal context. And if I can't overcome your objection, maybe I don't have such a good idea. So we're constantly finding ways of training. I do a book review every quarter. We've now made it mandatory because here's another problem. We were getting 25 people on the book review. I made it mandatory. There's now 250 people on the review. I even had a case recently, and the first book we made them come to was emotional intelligence, which we all can be better at. And so some guy we made him fill out a 3-questionnaire, and he says, I was really mad when I was told I had to go to this webinar because I didn't want to go. Because it's 5 to 5:30. Not that everybody walks out the door at 5, but maybe this person does. He says, then I listened to the webinar on emotional intelligence, and I realized that I really needed to be here. So sometimes, and maybe often, you've got to demand that people do these things. This is a requirement. You have to go to the book review. If that's really too much for you, go get a career somewhere else. So I'm demanding that they learn these things, and even if someone's learning at a pretty good pace, it's hard to keep up. Because we're in a technical business, it's moving quickly, And then when you throw on top things like emotional intelligence, management philosophies, you've got to be continuously learning. And those who don't fall into the complacent class, they become big problems for the corporation. How do we deal with somebody who's a good person, who's worked hard, but refuses to keep up? Those are hard HR problems. They're not easily solved. But I tend to tell people, look, you're staking yourself out where you want to be. And because you don't want to do something doesn't mean the company's not going to do it. You're leaving yourself behind. That's a choice you're making. You need to pay the consequences for those choices.
Hi, my name is Hiva, and I'm one of the students at the entrepreneurship here at the Radcliffe Foundation. My question is, you said that the most important thing is really you create the demand. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Can you explain that one more time?
You said that you do create the demand, like when you are...
Creative destruction?
No, creating demand.
Great demand, yeah.
Oh, create demand.
If you could elaborate on that. And my other question is, did you have any background in the field that you have like created your entrepreneurship, the basic, like did you have any background of working at a field where air vent was manufactured, and how did you come up with that idea and identify the need in that field?
Well, I guess that's the alertness. No, I had no background in any aspects of the business I'm currently involved in. No previous experience, no background in it. We learned as we went along. If you look at the manufacturing, in small job shops you have cell manufacturing. There's some methodologies of doing that. In big scale manufacturing you have methodologies. It's the in-between that's a problem. So I'll give you an example. Kitchen hoods, there's 15, 20 varieties and types of kitchen hoods, so you had no common standards. So how do you bring this thing to scale? You've got to first create the standard, which took 20 years to create the standard. And then eventually we put it on the assembly line, which allows us to drive down cost, increase quality, and get higher throughput. That was all bootstrapped over 20 years. In terms of creating demand, there's many things in our life that we don't know about, but someone else knows that they're good for us. But they have to educate us to that point. What do you do as a university? You're educating people about things they don't know about, and they don't know why they're important, but they do after you educate them. So we have to develop strategies and technologies, and then we have to educate the customer. So if you look futuristic, how are we going to integrate, and how is this restaurant going to work from a mechanical standpoint? Between our top 2 engineers and myself, we have a highly defined way that we think it's going to work. If I went out right now and told the average consulting engineer this is how it needs to work, they would think you're a lunatic. Now, over time, as we demonstrate these systems and what the merits of them, slowly we'll bring them along. This is going to be the new way things work. They're radically different. It's all electronically controlled, high levels of integration. Even modern day train carrier rooftop units are going to be somewhere down the line. They're going to move toward obsolescence because of the technologies that can come in. So here's an example. You walk in a retail shop, what do we often say? Why is it so cold in here? It's cold because they're trying to get the humidity out. And the only option they have is to keep it cold. Modern day technology that we have, we can move to a set point. You want to be 73 degrees, and then we can move to a relative humidity of 60, which means we can move the temperature up, not down. That's got to be explained to people because it's not intuitive. It's the temperature and the humidity. Here's how the process works. And engineers will challenge everything we put out in the marketplace. So we have to understand it well enough to convince them this is the future. We can also convince users. So it's a huge educational process. There's a Babson study that says this whole, you build a better mousetrap and people make a path to your door. It's nonsense. Because every product and technology has to be sold into the market. Customers don't beat a path to your door. Products selling themselves it's a total myth. You can have the best product in the world. If you don't have the best service, you don't have the right price, you haven't educated your consumer. you're not going to be successful. You see it in the high-tech world all the time. Sometimes the best product or technology doesn't exist. Sometimes technologies are taken out by other technologies. They're sold hard. Depends on what OEM specifies them, etc. So it's a somewhat complex process in one way, but if your philosophy and your strategy is right, you're creating a product that the customer needs. In our industry, they create a lot of products that they felt were nice, but they weren't useful to the customer. So what we did is we put a list in our seminars. We did national seminars for 10 years, and we have what we call the parade of gimmicks. Here's all the technologies introduced that never helped you, that you paid for, that we got rid of. And customers could relate to it. Yeah, that was no good. Here's the technology we're bringing to you. Here's why we're doing it, and here's what it costs. And we transform the industry. But it's not something you're going to do in a week or a day or a month. Something you can do over a very long period of time. And I wanted to make a lot of entrepreneurs say, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to get rich, and I'm going to retire at 40 and go fishing. What I like to see you do is to start a business and stay with it forever, assuming the industry or technology allows you to do that. Because at the end of my life, somebody else is going to take over and they're going to improve kitchen ventilation. There's no such a thing as reaching the zenith of any technology. But by staying with it a long period of time, your contribution in that industry becomes enormous, that it wouldn't have been in a much shorter period of time. So the serial entrepreneur, I don't believe in that concept. There's exceptions to every rule, but generally, companies, private equity buys a company today, what do? They strip it, and they debt it, and they sell it. They're not really mostly improving the technology. It's a good process. It's part of the whole market process. But entrepreneurs who have a vision and stay with it for a long period of time. Steve Jobs changed the world, changed technologies. And that's, as a student or an entrepreneur, I'd be thinking really long term. It took us 30 years to get those hoods on assembly lines, but we didn't give up on the idea. It took 30 years to get a sprinkler system with water to put out grease fire, but we didn't give up on the idea. We got it. So some ideas take a very, very long period of time. But if it's a good idea, its time will come.
Kurt, and then I'll come back. Kurt, and then I'll come to you.
Hear your thoughts on the international dimension of your business, especially your particular product line. Do you have any international sales? Who are your international competitors? And if it came to that point, would you ever consider offshoring your production?
I don't think our production is very suitable for offshoring. And if you look at, if you're familiar with Ronald Coase, was given a Nobel Prize for transactional costs. And when he was given the Nobel Prize, everybody said, well, transactional costs, I mean, any business person knows that. How in the heck do you get a Nobel Prize? He says, well, most businesses don't. So if you make a product in Mexico, let's say you make a rooftop unit, Trane makes one in Mexico. They have to bring it to a point in the US. And then it's got to go to another point. That's part of transactional costs. If I can make that product right on top of you and ship it directly onto your roof, I'm gaining in transactional costs, even though my manufacturing costs may be higher. So we use the transactional costs to understand how and where we're going to make products. We bring products in or components from Brazil, from Europe, from China, from Vietnam, and Taiwan, or wherever, because those components, that's the way modern manufacturing works, except at some government operations. But sourcing and making local. So one of our strategies is, think about this, we're making a product locally. Amazon's buying a product, they're putting it in the warehouse, and they're shipping it to you. So how's Amazon going to come in and beat us? Because we're going to make it right on top of you, and we're going to put it on your rooftop. You can't get more efficient than that. So if I have slightly higher costs, my transactional cost can still be lower than Trane, even though their manufacturing cost is lower. So if you look at the top of CaptiveAire, you've got 3 people that are really good at finance, budgeting, estimating, It's a core strength of the company. In some companies, maybe the manufacturing guy says, hey, I can make this 20% cheaper, and the decision's made to let them go ahead and make it. But do they know COSA's law? Do they understand transactional costs? Maybe not. If you look at, we sell from all of North America, Central America, South America down into the extent that we can. We could never make money in China in our business. One of our competitors tried to do that. They spent 15 years ago where they just packed their bags and came home. So I'm not going to go after something that maybe in 20 years you could make money and maybe you couldn't. Europe is very nuanced, so if we go to Europe, we'll do it through some kind of joint venture partnership. Because even if you're on the ground, you have all the approvals. Well, you're in England, but you're not from Hungary. You have to deal with the hometown job. It is tremendously complicated for a product like ours. And then you have to deal with, even in the U.S., we call it building codes to the zip code. Because every inspector in every locale can change that building code on the spot. So you have to know how to deal with that.
So your hoods, I'm actually talking about the product. Does your do you have a fire what is it called? Suspension or suppression system inside the hood
We do.
itself now? Okay, because I have one of your systems in my restaurant and didn't realize it until I was looking at it. It also, I think, had lighting inside that hood.
It's got lighting, it's got-
Had these long light bulbs, and sometimes they would fill with water. Did you ever run into that situation? I know this is crazy, but we did have your system, and
That's because of contracting errors that get
okay.
water on top
So
of
did
it.
you ever run into that? Run into different situations where you had to change up your product due to these things happening?
And these things are constant. So we try to design a product so it's as foolproof as possible. And we're getting closer and closer, but there still are problems and challenges we have to deal with. Fire system, all the electrical controls, all the wiring that's going up to fans. But there's a lot of challenges in this industry. All the rooftop equipment. No. So we do a fully integrated system. We also have a team that goes out and inspects that system and tries to find contractor errors and get them fixed before we open the restaurant. It's not a perfect process because the contractor may refuse to do it. He may have done things you didn't catch. But our goal is, here's what our goal is. Like, we told our service department, I want a perfect outcome every time. They'll say, well, that's crazy. That's what I want. Figure out how to do it. We're going to give you ways and means in doing it. We're going to change our product design to make it more foolproof. So we're attacking all these problems. We're not pointing fingers at the other guy. We're taking 100% responsibility. This is just a comment. If you take 100% responsibility for what you're doing, and you don't blame anybody else for anything, you can fix the problem. As soon as you point the finger at another person, it can no longer be fixed, because you can't control the other person. You can't control the industry. You can't control anything but yourself. Or as stated by one wise person, the hardest person to manage is yourself. So if you can figure out how to manage yourself, you can figure out how to manage a lot of other people.
So I think it's interesting that you ended on that. My question is about what you sort of do to implement systems that avoid complacency and how you implement that in your own personal and daily routine.
Well, one is I read a lot. And then someone said this about Donald Trump. There's a lot of negative things about him. Here's one positive thing. He's constantly interviewing people. So entrepreneurs are constantly, they meet somebody, they're interviewing them. So you might have a mentor for an hour next to you. It might be a brilliant person. But if you don't ask them any questions or the right questions, you didn't learn anything from that person. Constantly interviewing people, reading. And if I have an idea, I'll throw it out to 3 or 4 people and I'll let them challenge it. Because they may see something I'm not seeing. We have debates. We like to debate. We like to disagree. Because disagreement and different points of view leads to better outcomes. And then we do constant seminars, book reviews. I don't like the word training. I just think you train dogs. Okay, you develop and form people. So we present all these venues where you can learn. And some of them are ours and some are other people. In our schools, we're going to build a massive electronic library. So every book, every video, if it's Clayton Christensen and we're allowed to put it on there, it's going to be inside there. And we're going to pump that back into CaptiveAire and say, we expect you to be learning something. Learn anything, relative or germane to what you're doing. And we're going to give them the opportunity to do that. It's not an exact process, and people are going to resist it. And what I tell them is, look, are you spending your time at the BW3 watching sports? Or can you spend a little bit of your time developing yourself? Under Austrian economic theory, you own yourself. Under Julian Simon, what's the greatest resource in the world? It's you, your brain. So why not develop it to its fullest potential? And if you do that, you're going to be happy, you're going to be prosperous, and you're going to change the world. Not complicated. But most people, most of the time, are not doing it. One last thing, and I say this publicly, most people, most of the time, are not thinking. So people say, I'm creative, think outside the box. I say, no, you're not even thinking at all. You're not thinking, okay? What you're doing is you're reacting, and you're coming up with some silliness that you're calling it thinking outside the box. So first, learn to think. And then maybe if you're really lucky and really smart, once in a great while, you can think creatively. But you can't think creatively, and this is an Edwin Land comment, that creative thinking begins at the edge of the known, implying that you must know something to be a creative thinker. So you've got to be loading your database, and your education I call your database. It's everything you've learned and you can access. That's your personal database. So if you're not loading up your database, somebody else is loading up, they're going to clock you every time. Assuming that they are alert and that they have good thinking skills. And Murray can provide you with a little graph that we put together that said, here's how this process works. I didn't think of this. This is pure Ludwig von Mises. Alertness, thinking leads to action. How you think is how you act. Once you start getting some of those basics down, you become a player. Then it's just a question, learn more, go take more courses, commend you for being here and doing this. Think better. Realize when you make a mistake, admit, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. We as a company make mistakes. We apologize. We fix them on our dime. We don't try to push them off on somebody else. You know, at the end of the year, you can't find that money in the P&L. You just can't find it. Yes, sir.
Last question, yeah.
Very quick question. I understand that you've also entered the education business, which is for an entrepreneur kind of an interesting little twist. You're into charter schools. You've got 5,000 students now. That's a real different business than being in the air business, right? How did you get into that marketplace, and what was the problem you were trying to solve?
Well, particularly in the plant, and I heard this on radio a week ago. You've got people who can't measure a 16th. So they can do 1 inch or 2 inches, but they can't do 1 inch and a 16th. That just bugged the heck out of me. That somebody's went through high school and they can't put the measuring tape out. We have other people in North Carolina, and 25% of people are illiterate. Now, illiteracy has a very wide range. But at some range there, they have a real hard time to function. I said, society says, oh, we love our kids and we do everything for them, we build great schools. And I'm saying, no, you're not. There's half these kids, or a large percentage, have no chance in life because you failed to educate them. And you were paid to educate them. It made me mad. So in '97, I filed for a public charter. And I was very confident I could run a charter school better than the existing public schools because the bar was so low. And we did. And by year 2, we had this massive waiting list for people to get in, and then eventually decided that, one, it's hard to run a charter school because you got the government in your shop, and I don't want the government in my shop. So we decided to do Thales Academies, private K-12, high quality, low cost. There is no such a thing in the marketplace. And I just went through with our administrators the other day. Well, do you understand that it can't really be done? I said, I understand nobody did it. But we're doing it. We're actually doing it. And we're going to promulgate it to a very, very large model. And it's hard. Okay? And it requires a lot of adjustments. And it requires getting rid of the conventional wisdom. For example, You can put 30 kids in a classroom, homogeneous, in skill level, and it doesn't matter whether it's 30 or 50. It just doesn't make any difference. You can test them electronically in real time and post those grades every day. So the teacher doesn't have to do all the same amount of work. So we're going to break all the conventions within education. We're already doing it. Again, this idea of a really tremendous experience, both from the K-5 and then the classic curriculum, which has almost been killed in this country. It was so bad that when I started the classic curriculum, I called it traditional, because nobody knew what classical curriculum was. I thought it was some weird thing that I made up. I said, no, it's been around for 2,000 years. I didn't invent it. And then eventually we transitioned to classic. And now people are saying, oh, classic, yeah, they take Latin. They can think. Oh, they can write. They're good students. It's rigorous. And you have to, we work to mastery. Mastery, new concept in public schools, okay? So all those concepts are being introduced, but we're using the same management concepts you would in any other enterprise. They're all the same. But it's breaking conventional wisdom, finding a better way to do it. We changed the mental type from 304 to 430, and the entire food service industry followed us. It took them 20 years. So we had a 20-year advantage on the industry. That's why we're the dominant company.
So here's the big question, you know, and I don't get the impression that you're going to go fishing soon. Is that right?
I went fishing once in my life because a customer forced me to, and I said, okay, I'm retired. I'm done with that.
So these are the only two things we disagree with. You know, I like fishing, and I was a management consultant, but my question was really more about how you see, in the way to getting to this billion-dollar company. Is there, conventional companies would talk about succession plans. What does the non-conventional company talk about? When you're on that journey.
Here's why I don't believe in succession plans. I mean, Dell had a succession plan. They put a guy in there, and 2 years later they had to fire him. It's the hardest thing in the world because essentially when you replace the founder, you replace basically the whole management structure of the company. It's not going to be the same company anymore. So my idea is I'm going to be there until I die or I can't be there anymore for whatever reason. And I'm training an army or developing an army of individuals. And somewhere within that group, somebody's going to take over that understands the philosophy of the company. The problem is, why CEOs are paid a lot of money? Because they have a wide range of skill set. And they don't have to be the best at anything, but they have to be competitive in a wide range. So you could be absolutely brilliant in everything except finance. Well, what's finance? It's the blood of a company. So if you get finance wrong, you don't have any blood flow and you're dead. You can pick the wrong technologies and you're eventually dead, slower death. So developing individuals to their highest level, and really smart people, and my dad really beat this into our head over the years, you have to be willing, you've mastered one skill. And if you went back to 1960, somebody was a doctor, they were proud that they knew nothing about mechanics and nothing about finance, so they were advertising their ignorance. My dad said, don't ever do that. At least be competitive, at least learn something about it. So CEO has to get this wide breadth and range, and they just can't leave one thing to the professionals, because that's what's going to take them down. So it's personal development, understanding really good management, future philosophies, understanding humanities, emotional intelligence, having a good feel. When you listen to somebody and when you're not, you have to have a good indicator. Do I trust this person or I don't trust him? It's a complex thing, but those skills are developed over a long period of time. They're not infused into you. You're not going to have them coming out of college. You're going to have to work for them your whole life.
I appreciate that. I think it's been a great lesson, right? I think I personally feel inspired. Now, there is Bob has very kindly left I made handouts, and they're at the very back. Two ones, is a kind of little set of about the entrepreneur. We covered most of this tonight, actually. I've been checking through, but there's little slides that fit about Bob's view about being an entrepreneur. And then the daily execution process, which I think will be good for everybody, which Bob has just talked about. So they're actually at the back. And, you know, I really appreciate you coming here from North Carolina and doing it. I think we've learned a lot. It's inspiring. And see, that's what Merrick Engage is about. It's bring people who are interesting, to the school. So this is the last session of the semester. We're going to have we'll have two more, and you have to look for advertisements of this in the spring semester. I haven't advertised for that because I haven't nailed down completely. One of them, subject to the Department of Justice, will be about a major merger. But I can't announce it because I can't get a date, because if it's Department of Justice hasn't ruled on it, we can't delve into the details, or else we'll break SEC. They won't come and talk about it. But when it's announced, when the Department of Justice rules on it, we will be having some senior. This will be very interesting. We'll have a unique opportunity to get to the heart of what's in a major merger, and with some senior executives. So that's one we're planning. And then there'll be a couple of others, so you can look out. So look out for these on your emails and social media and whatever. So
Can I give a closing comment?
yes, yeah.
Learn from the masters, and they're right in front of you. Just suck that information out of them, and work from the high correct theory to ground. So transactional costs or right engineering theories. If you're not, you're going to crash. So you have to be seeking out the correct theories. The Wright brothers had all the correct theories of flying, and it was determined they obviously couldn't fly. So what they figured out was one of these theories is wrong. They did the wind tunnel. They figured it out. That's probably the best model and example I think you could ever get in entrepreneurial invention, entrepreneurs in general. High theory, mentors, moving toward the absolute best that it can be done, jettison conventional wisdom. Thank you.
Right, thank you.